and welcome to Interviews with the Author. My name is Victoria Ash, and I am the curriculum developer here at Serial City Science. Today we have Anthony Fredericks, the author of Under One Rock, Bugs, Slugs, and Other Uggs. This book is about a boy who discovers a whole community of living things under just one rock. Welcome, Mr. Fredericks, and thank you so much for coming today.
My pleasure. It's a pleasure to, as a former, second grade teacher, it's a pleasure to be talking to second grade students again. Thank you.
Now, when I read your book, when I read your book the first time, I really loved how each page really builds on each other and it continues to build throughout the book. Would you mind reading your book for us today?
I would love to. Here's my copy of Under One Rock. Here is a field for insects to play in, and acres of shade for turtles to lay in, with wind-brushed trees for birds to nest in, and sun-splashed spaces for lizards to rest in. This is where on this summer day there lay a rock, all rough and gray. This is the rock. The rough gray rock was discovered by chance by a brown-skinned boy in ragged pants, a curious lad who wondered aloud, what could be hiding in the red rich ground? He lifted the rock, all rough and gray, that he found in the field on that summer's day, and there he found some varied creatures, a village of animals with special features. These are the earthworms, all squiggly and round, who aerate the soil in the red rich ground below the big rock all rough and gray that hides a whole crowd on a summer's day. This is the army of hundreds of ants who dig twisting tunnels and farm tiny plants, neighbors to earthworms all squiggly and round, who aerate the soil in the red rich ground below the big rock all rough and gray that hides a whole crowd on a summer's day. This is the spider with her eight-eyed face, who builds a home in this cool, dark place, a home near the army of hundreds of ants who dig twisting tunnels and farm tiny plants, neighbors to earthworms all squiggly and round, who aerate the soil in the red, rich ground, below the big rock all rough and gray that hides a whole crowd on a summer's day. This is the beetle, all shiny and black, with grooves running down both sides of his back. A friend of the spider with her eight-eyed face, they live side by side in this cool, dark place. A home near the army of hundreds of ants who dig twisting tunnels and farm tiny plants, neighbors to earthworms all squiggly and round, who aerate the soil in the red rich ground below the big rock all rough and gray that hides a whole crowd on a summer's day. Some tiny field crickets who sing with their feet, search near the rock for some seeds they can eat. They live with the beetle all shiny and black, with grooves running down both sides of his back. A friend of the spider with an eight-eyed face, they live side by side in this cool, dark place. A home near the army of hundreds of ants who dig twisting tunnels and farm tiny plants. Neighbors to earthworms all squiggly and round, who aerate the soil in the red, rich ground below the big rock all rough and gray that hides a whole crowd on a summer's day. A soul millipede with a sensitive feel, slips through the dirt in search of a meal. He plows by the crickets who sing with their feet and search near the rock for some seeds they can eat. They live with the beetle all shiny and black, with grooves running down both sides of his back. He's a friend of the spider with her eight-eyed face. They live side by side in this cool, dark place, a home near the army of hundreds of ants who dig twisting tunnels and farm tiny plants, neighbors to earthworms all squiggly and round who aerate the soil in the red, rich ground below the big rock all rough and gray that hides a whole crowd on a summer's day. These 6 tiny slugs, all covered with slime, creep over the soil, eating most of the time. Past one millipede with a sensitive feel, who slips through the dirt in search of a meal, and plows past the crickets who sing with their feet, that search near the rock for some seeds they can eat. They live with the beetle all shiny and black, with grooves running down both sides of his back. He's a friend of the spider with her eight-eyed face. They live side by side in this cool, dark place, a home near the army of hundreds of ants who dig twisting tunnels and farm tiny plants, neighbors to earthworms all squiggly and round, who aerate the soil in the red, rich ground below the big rock all rough and gray that hides a whole crowd on a summer's day. The creatures and critters live together as one beneath the gray rock, away from the sun, a collection of neighbors, the large and the small, and the place where they live is home to them all,
Wow,
under one rock.
that was amazing. And you seem to know a ton about communities that live under a rock. What did you need to know before writing this book?
Well, I asked myself a question. I said, I take a lot of walks in forests and on trails around a local lake, and I've kept seeing these rocks. So, like a scientist, I said, okay, I wonder what lives under that rock. And I wanted to find out. So I started lifting up some rocks, and I made some pretty incredible discoveries. Slugs and spiders and all kinds of really neat animals. And so I asked myself another question. What can I learn about some of these animals? Went back home, started reading some books. And I read more, I got more and more information. I said, you know what? Maybe I can turn all of that information into a book. And so it took me about a year and a half, and I wrote Under One Rock. And that book was written about almost 25 years ago, and that book is still in bookstores today. So it was one of my favorite books to write for kids. Yeah.
Wonderful. So taking what you already see in nature and then doing that research behind the scene to write this book, that's an incredible way to expand your knowledge there.
Yes.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I bet you consider yourself to be a scientist. Am I right?
Absolutely.
And who can become a scientist and how do we do that?
Well, again, let's go back to our definition of what a scientist is. A scientist asks a lot of questions and then goes out and looks for answers. For example, one of the critters that you heard me talk about in the book was this one right here, called a slug. Well, the name of this is a banana slug. And boys and girls, you probably know why this is called a banana slug, because it doesn't look like an apple and it doesn't look like a pear. Okay. It looks just like a banana. Right. Okay. So I saw these things crawling around under the rocks. Asked myself a question. what are slugs and what are some of the kinds of things that they do. So again, I went in and I started, I started reading some books and I talked to some scientists and I learned some incredible information. In fact, I probably learned so much information that I wrote a separate book all about my favorite animal in the world, slugs. Okay. So if you're interested in some really cool animals, there's slugs. But again, the whole book thing is asking questions, finding out answers, and then sharing it with readers, such as all of the students watching this video. Here's some things that I learned. Guess what? You can go out in nature and learn the same things too.
Yeah, so it sounds like you spend a lot of time out in nature observing your natural habitat there. Tell me, what does it mean to observe and how can we become better observers?
Good scientists are always looking around. One of the neat things that I always do is I like that there's a nearby forest and I walk in the middle of that forest and I just stand perfectly still and I listen for the sounds. Maybe I hear a bird, maybe I hear some leaves rustling, maybe I hear a squirrel scampering through the leaves. I look all around. I don't move. I keep my feet in one place, but I'm looking all around. What's happening up in the treetops? What's happening? What kinds of animals are crawling up and down the trunk? What's going on through all around and through the trees? So I'm using all of my observation powers. And here are the 5 observation powers. Seeing, using our eyes, hearing, listening for things. We can learn an awful lot when we listen. How about smelling? Okay. What do you smell when you walk into a forest? How does that smell differ from when you walk into a garden, for example, or when you walk down a sidewalk? Think about the different kinds of smells. Tasting. Now, scientists don't do an awful lot of tasting because there's a lot of things that we don't want to taste. But when you eat food at home, you taste it, you have different flavors. So you're learning about different kinds of food just through your power of taste. And you know what? One of the things that we often forget, the power of touching, using our fingers to learn about the world. One of the activities that I used to use in my classroom, I'd have students go out. We'd have each student stand in front of a tree. I said, you have to close your eyes and use just your fingers and describe the tree in front of you. You can't taste it. You can't see it. You can't hear it. Just use your powers of touch. So scientists, when we talk about observing, we're talking about seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. And scientists use all of those to learn about the world that they live in.
Wonderful. So your topic here, Under One Rock, I think is so incredibly important. Can you tell me what you think is the most important topic in the book?
Okay, I'm going to come back to a common theme. Everybody is a scientist. It doesn't make any difference whether you're in second grade or whether you're a teacher or whether you're a truck driver or whether you're you travel the world. Everybody has the capacity or everybody has the ability to be a scientist. If you see things, if you hear things, smell, touch, and taste things, you are a scientist. Now, notice, boys and girls, I'm going to point to something that's in my pocket. Okay. See this thing right here? I've got 2 things. I've got a notebook and I got a pen. You know why? Because one of the things that I do as a scientist or as an author, I always want to record the new things that I'm learning. I don't wait till I get back home. So everywhere I go, I have this notebook and I have this pen with me, and I'm always writing down things. I might do an illustration of an animal that I see. I might write down some of the things that I smelled or touched, but I'm always recording things because now I've got a record of the neat things that are going on in the world, and I can refer back to that if I'm writing a book, for example, or if I just want to, what are some other things I can learn from the books that other people have written as well.
Now, I know that we have a few young authors in our audience today. What made you just decide to become an author, and what advice do you have for future authors?
Here's probably the best advice I have for future authors. Listen to this quote. Good writers are also good readers. If you want to be a writer, you have to do a lot of reading. I usually read about a book a week. Right now, I'm here are some of the books that I'm reading right now. I'm reading 4 different books right now. Okay. I love to read. Why? Because reading puts lots of ideas into my head. When I've got lots of ideas in my head, guess what happens? I start asking lots of questions. And what happens when I ask lots of questions? I want to go and find the answers. So if you want to be a writer, do lots and lots of reading. I've written about 4 dozen children's books, and I've written a lot of adult books too. But I always, before I start any of those books, I do a lot of readings. Because then I've got a lot of information in my head, and I start asking myself a lot of questions, going to find the answers. And then I say to myself, I'd like to share some of that information with readers, with second grade readers, fourth grade readers, adult readers. So if you want to be a good writer, read every single day. Oh, one more thing, write every single day too. Good readers are good writers. We do reading every day. We do writing every day. I've been writing professionally for about 45 years. So, and I've still kept up my reading habit throughout all those 45 years.
Wow, and I know that in your 45 years, you have written a ton of really incredible books. Is Are you able to share some of your other books with us today?
Absolutely. Let me share a couple of them. Here's a book perfect for second graders. It's called Desert Night, Desert Day. Some really incredible animals that you might find in. Oh, I don't know if I can share this one with the boys and girls. Hmm. Let me read to you what I wrote. Stingers lash, whip and dash, scorpions grab in a flash. Cool animal. Again, this was a book that I learned a lot of stuff about when I wrote it. Here's another book that's similar to Under One Rock, In One Tide Pool. I grew up in California, and we lived right on the beach, and we had a lot of tide pools, and I used to always walk in among those tide pools. And guess what I had in my pocket? Okay. And even as a kid, I had one of these notebooks with me, and I discovered some really cool stuff, some really cool animals. How about this one on the cover here? Everybody calls that a starfish, not a starfish. Okay. What is it called? It's a sea star, because you know what? Here's one of the things I learned, and I didn't know this. It's not a fish at all. It has nothing to do with fish, but we gave it a wrong name somewhere along the line, but it's actually called a sea star. Here's one of my recent books called Tall Tree. This is about the animals that live way up high in the tree. And this was a magical learning experience. For example, one of the animals that I've discovered high in those trees was this animal right here. Okay. Now I think most of the boys and girls know what kind of animal this is. This is called a bald eagle. Okay. And bald eagles live along the coast, along the California coast, and they sit up in the trees. But I'm going to ask a question of all the boys and girls, but I'm not going to give you the answer. You're going to have to find the answer. Why do you think this bird is called a bald eagle? Bald eagle. So look that up. You've got a question now. Now you want to go into some books and find out what is the reason we call that a bald eagle.
Wow. Well, A Tall Trees looks like such an incredible book, and you said it's your most recent?
This is my most recent book, yeah. And
Yes.
I was paired up with a really incredible illustrator in this book. Okay, here are some owls that are high up in a tree. Okay, it's a counting book, but it's also a nature book too. Perfect for
Beautiful.
second graders. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I think I'll add it to my own list since we should be reading and writing every day, right?
Okay. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Fredericks, for coming in and speaking with us today about your books and the importance of the habitats that we have around us. And don't forget, students, the next time that you are out and about, keep an eye out for small communities of creatures that live right under your nose.
Thank you so much, boys and girls. Hope you enjoy reading the book.